No movement. No breathing. Nothing. When I returned to the trail and kept walking, the footsteps didn't come back immediately. They waited. Like whoever, or whatever, was following me understood patience. Over the next 2 days, the pattern continued. Sometimes the sound stayed behind me. Sometimes it shifted ahead around bends in the trail. And every single time I rounded the corner expecting to finally see someone. The trail was empty. By night 4, I was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with hiking. You can only feel watched for so long before your mind starts grinding itself apart trying to explain it. That night, I woke just before dawn. Something felt wrong immediately. I reached toward my boots outside the tent and froze. The laces had been threaded together. Not tied in knots. Not tangled randomly. Carefully woven. Right boot laced through left boot in an intricate pattern that must have taken several quiet minutes to complete. Whoever did it had stood outside my tent while I slept. Close enough to hear me breathing. Close enough to hurt me if they wanted to. But they didn't. That's the part that still lives in my head. Nothing was stolen. Nothing damaged. The message wasn't violent. It was deliberate. It said, I can reach you whenever I want. I sat there staring at those laces for a long time before finally cutting them apart with my knife. And I remember thinking something that scared me more than the act itself. Whoever did this wanted me calm enough to understand it. On the final night, I finally spoke into the darkness. I stood outside my tent and said, I know you're there, and I know how long you've been following me. The woods stayed silent. Then, somewhere beyond the trees, footsteps began moving away. Slowly, unhurried, like something had heard me, considered me, and decided the conversation was over. I drove home the next morning, but part of me never really left those woods. My ex-wife used to say I changed after that trip. She said I started checking locks twice, sitting with my back against walls in restaurants, watching doorways without realizing it. She was right. Something fundamental shifted in me out there. Because once you truly understand that something can stand inches away from you in darkness for hours without being seen, you never completely relax again. To this day, I keep my boots inside the tent whenever I camp. No exceptions. People ask why sometimes. I tell them it's a habit. And technically, that's true. It's just not the reason. My name is Celeste Burkhart. I'm 37 years old, and before this happened, I was the least likely person imaginable to become the subject of a story like this. I teach 7th grade science in Western Pennsylvania. Before this trip, my outdoor experience mostly consisted of campground weekends and roasting marshmallows beside parked cars. This 6-day solo backpacking trip through Allegheny National Forest was supposed to be the first real thing I'd ever done completely on my own. And for the first 3 days, it was incredible. Painful in the honest way new adventures are painful. Every climb burned. Every mile humbled me. But I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. Then on the morning of day 4, I found the note. It sat beneath a flat rock beside the trail, positioned carefully enough to be noticed only if you were paying attention. My name was written on the outside. Celeste. Neat black letters. I remember staring at it without touching it for almost a full minute because my brain refused to process what I was seeing. Nobody out there should have known my name. I hadn't signed any public register. Hadn't told strangers my route. Hadn't crossed paths with anyone for nearly 2 days. Still, there it was. My name. I finally unfolded the paper. Inside was one sentence. You should turn around at the creek crossing tomorrow. That was it.
No explanation. No signature.
Nothing else. Just a warning from someone who somehow knew my name, my route, and where I'd be the following day. I sat on a fallen log trying to think rationally. But fear doesn't feel dramatic when it's real. Real fear feels quiet. Mathematical. You start calculating distances, timelines, possibilities. Someone had been ahead of me long enough to leave that note intentionally, which meant someone was tracking me. I changed my route immediately, added 3 extra miles to avoid the creek crossing entirely, and ended the trip early. And even now, years later, I still think about what waited at that crossing. Was the note a warning from someone trying to protect me? Or was it bait designed to push me somewhere else? I honestly don't know which explanation is worse. I still keep the note sealed in a plastic sleeve inside my filing cabinet. Every now and then I take it out and stare at my own name written in somebody else's careful handwriting. Because whoever wrote it knew exactly where I was going before I got there. And I still don't know how. My name is Dr. Ingrid Solhog. I'm a wildlife biologist, and for over 20 years I've worked in remote ecosystems across 5 continents. I've spent nights in jungles dense enough to block moonlight, in tundra where temperatures kill exposed skin in minutes, in wilderness areas so isolated that rescue simply isn't realistic. I'm not inexperienced. I'm not superstitious. And I have never been more disturbed than I was during 7 days in the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness in northern Minnesota. My doctoral student, who I'll call Patrick, was with me. Patrick is careful, brilliant, rational, the kind of scientist who triple-checks data before speaking out loud. That matters, because both of us experienced the same thing. The first 4 days were perfect field conditions, excellent wolf activity, minimal human interference, strong data collection. Everything felt normal. Then Patrick found the first deer carcass, an adult female lying perfectly intact in a clearing.
No bite marks, no scavenging,
no signs of struggle, just lying there unnaturally still, like it had been placed. We documented it and moved on. That night Patrick played me an audio recording captured after dark. At first it sounded like wolves, but the longer we listened, the worse it became. The calls were structurally wrong. The rhythms didn't match natural pack communication. The harmonics felt distorted somehow, close enough to mimic wolves without actually being wolves. Patrick looked at me across the fire and quietly said, "They sound like something trying to imitate them." Neither of us slept well after that. The next day we found a second deer. Same position, same condition, same impossible stillness. And by then the atmosphere around camp had changed completely. We stopped speaking unless necessary. Both of us were carrying the same thought without wanting to say it aloud. Something in those woods knew we were there. On the 7th night, I woke into absolute silence. Not ordinary nighttime quiet. Complete silence.
no insects,
No water movement. No wind. Every natural sound had vanished at once. Then something began circling our tent. Slowly. 1 full circuit every 4 minutes. Measured. Controlled. Deliberate. I've spent decades around large predators. This movement matched none of them. Eventually, it stopped directly behind the tent. And stayed there. 7 full minutes. Neither of us moved. Neither of us breathed properly. Patrick later admitted he spent those 7 minutes trying to determine whether the thing outside was breathing at all. When I analyzed the field recorder back home, I discovered something even worse. Beneath the silence, there was a subsonic frequency running continuously outside the tent. Too low for human hearing, but deliberate, sustained. Something out there had been producing it intentionally for 7 straight minutes while standing behind us in darkness. I shared the recording with 2 colleagues in bioacoustics. One stopped responding entirely. The other called me privately and said something I still remember word for word. I don't know what made that sound, and I don't think you want to know either. We broke camp before dawn and left without discussing it. Even now, after all these years, one detail keeps returning to me. Whatever circled our tent that night could have stayed hidden forever. It chose not to. It wanted us to know it was there. Not see it. Not understand it. Just know. And somehow, that feels worse. That's all for tonight. And honestly, some of these stories stay with you long after the screen goes dark. The voices Darren heard pacing him through the mountains. The note waiting for Celeste before she reached the creek crossing. The 7 minutes of silence outside Dr. Solhog's tent. I think about what it costs people to carry experiences they can't explain. And maybe that's the real horror in stories like these. Not monsters. Not ghosts. But the feeling that something shared the woods with them and chose to stay just beyond understanding.